Hello everybody. We're continuing the development of the REST API application using Phalcon v6. We have a few things going on today, but we are going to concentrate primarily on tests and PHPStan just to make sure that our code is as pristine as possible and we don't have any issues. Having good test coverage would allow us to make changes and identify which areas are affected by said changes and either adjust our tests or adjust our code. One thing I did before, since our last video, was I created a folder here called ADR and I dumped the action handler, and the same thing with the action interface, domain interface, and responder interface. And actually, while I was preparing for this video, I thought about it, and it's not 100% what I would have liked. So what I can do, what I was thinking of doing actually, is under the ADR is to put the action domain controller, action domain responder folders, so that I can split all the interface and the relevant classes. So let's do that for now. Directory, action, domain, and responder. And what we're going to do is we're going to move the responder interface into the responder, the action interface under action handler under action, the action interface under action as well. And I moved the wrong file. It's alright. And then domain interface will go under domain. So PHPStorm is usually really good at moving things around for you, but just in case, we're gonna check whether everything is fine using our browser. Now here's the kicker. If I did have tests already in this application handling everything, tests would have revealed all these changes to me, whether they were successful or not. So just in case, let's run the tests and let's see. Well, they do pass, but that doesn't necessarily mean that our application is correct. So if I go to my app and press hello world, it seems to be working fine. So just another check for us to make sure that everything is fine. I'm going to take the JSON responder. You see it moved itself to domain ADR responder interface. That's great. So I want to move this one to the responder also and just take it out of here. So we have all the ADR related classes and interfaces under one roof, if you like. So one more thing to check just in case. The hello service, yes, it did change properly. And actually here in the date, what I can do is I can use dates and then use this format. It's not necessary, but it's nice to know that I use those. We have quite a bit of work to do. For starters, let's do Composer CS. Code sniffer works fine. And now we need to do Composer Analyze. And I do expect quite a few errors on this. Alright, we have 12 errors. So what we'll need to do is we need to go to the domain middleware abstract middleware and correct these issues here. Let's go to services first. Let's go to HTTP. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new empty class. We're going to call it response types. This is going to be a final class that will have nothing in it. And what we're going to do here is we're going to define the relevant PHPStan types so that we can import them in any area that we want to by just using the PHPStan import type. This class will never execute in your actual code. It will only be used by PHPStan. So let's put a little comment here. We're going to use PHPStan type tData. This is going to be the data that we're going to be sending to the application. This comes by means of when the domain executes and we get whatever we get from there, and then it goes to the responder. Whatever the responder gets, that array is our data. It will be array key, and then it will be mixed, because we don't know what every single endpoint will return, or it will be array of nothing. And then PHPStan type t_errors. The errors are a little bit easier because it will be an array of array key, and then in that we're going to have an array of int, and then the value will be a string, and then that one will close there, or it will be an array empty. And finally, we need to define our response payload, what we're going to be sending back to the caller. And this one was that array that we created with the meta and the data and the errors and all that stuff. It will be an array of, it will have data, and the data type will be tData. We'll have errors, and that one will be t_errors. And we'll have meta, which will be an array of code, which will be int. My tabs are not very good. Alright, code will be int, and then we'll have hash, which will be string, message will be string, and then timestamp will be string. So we've now defined all these types, and we know what every response we send, it will be of this type, the t_response payload. So coming back to the abstract middleware halt, we just need to make sure that everything is as we expected there, and we define those types there. So in the abstract middleware at the top, all I can do is PHPStan import type. We're gonna import the tData from response types, and then we're gonna import the t_errors as well. And here, let's make alias response exception, and then this one will have its own alias. And now this data will be tData, and then this one will be t_errors. So now if I run it again, I should have around 10 errors. 11. Okay, I'll take it. So now we have the not found middleware that it complains. So let me copy these two just in case to have them. and we're going to go to the not found middleware, and it complains that hold expects array int string. It was given an array int string. Well, we're gonna work on this a little bit later, because the errors collection, I want it to be a collection of potential errors. So when we get towards the validation part of the application, you might have a couple of validations that failed, so more than one. So the errors would be a collection of those. Now, the HTTP codes in app resource not found does return an array with a number as the key and a text as value, but it does not abide by what we've defined. So what we're going to do is we're going to enclose this into an array so it doesn't affect anything. Let's put a doc block here, and then on this one we don't need these exceptions because none of them are being thrown. If I run it again, we're having 8 errors, which is great. Okay, so now we have to work a little bit on the response. In order to find what we can do about PHPStan. So response, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy what I had from here. So we're going to need the tdata terrors, and we're going to need also the other one, the tresponse payload. Alright, and the tresponse payload will be this guy here, what this will store. This one. And actually we can get rid of this because we did not define that the response payload will be empty. And then let's have a look at all the methods that we have. So render is fine. This one, code message, looks fine. Now here with payload data, the array that needs to be in there, or the array that will be in there, is tdata. And for the errors, it will be terrors. And I don't think we have anything else. Let's have a quick look here. Another composer analyze. Let's see. And our response is perfectly fine. So now we only have one error in the error handler provider. And that should be a very easy one to detect and pick up. So it complains cannot call method error on mix. So line 43. Line 43 is the logger that we call error. And the reason this one comes up is because PHPStan doesn't know what logger is. By doing container get shared container logger, yes, we are getting a logger object, but the get shared method of the container can return any service that we have defined. So PHPStan doesn't really know whether this is a logger. In order to help it, what we're going to do is we're going to say, put a small doc block on top of it and say logger. And now if I analyze it, I should be in the green, which is perfect. So now what we need to do is we need to run tests. In order for us to run the tests, we need to run them with coverage report, just to make sure that we have all of our code executing at least one time and that everything works fine. Please be very, very, very cautious, because you can dive into the 100% code coverage, which is good to have, but it might not be the best thing for your application. And what do I mean by that? There are often times that developers would actually get into a black hole or a rabbit hole, or whatever the expression might be, to try and get as much coverage as possible for their code without creating meaningful tests. a test should actually cover the area by testing a piece of functionality. And the smaller the classes you make, the smaller your classes are, and the more they operate as if they are a little black box that you send input and you get output, the more the, it's going to be easier for you if you have that kind of functionality and you test it. You test that particular block of code instead of creating impossible scenarios just to get that 1% more of code coverage. Yes, of course, we all like to see that 100% and everything being green in the report, but be cautious not to waste your time and dive into the hole that 100% code coverage is making your code work better. Again, it is excellent to strive for 100%, but there might be some times that it's not going to be feasible depending on how your code is structured, and you might not even have the ability to change the code in such a way that you could achieve 100% code coverage. Testing should be done in a meaningful way in order to test methods, functions, and small blocks of code, or even end-to-end. So with that in mind, I didn't mean to lecture anybody, but I just want to make sure that yes, I do always strive for 100% code coverage myself, but I am conscious of the fact that I need to test actual functions and paths that my application takes. Okay, so let's try and run the tests. We have 7 tests, 18 assertions. Let's go to Brave. This thing does work perfectly fine, and we have all these here that we need to address. All right, so let's go on the services. We see that in env, we did write some tests before. We have the env manager. We need to test the app env log level and time zone. So let's go do that just to make sure that everything is fine on that end. Unit, domain, and env manager. So test app returns root. That's fine. This is the when we get the from .env load. Yes, we have our setup here. Okay. All right, let's go for it. Public function test app env. That's what we're going to test first. Return value. And we have, do we have, yes, we have backup globals up there. And what we're going to do is we're going to say env equals app env production, and then we have expected equals production actual append, and this assert same, and actually we need to put a void here. Always good to have everything nice and defined. So app env returns default. We're not going to have anything here. We're going to have development. So what we're going to test here is when I call app env, it should return development if nothing has been defined. But if in my super global, the env, I do have the app env defined, then I should be getting whatever that value is. Let's run this. Perfect. Let's have a quick look at our code coverage. You see now app env is covered, and in the app env we checked this part here. Oops, excuse me. We checked this part here, which will be the default value that comes from. Sorry, it's the code report, but we are going to get the development if we haven't defined it, but we are going to get whatever the value is if it is defined. So we checked that. Let's have a look at the log level. We could pretty much copy the test, but let me copy this and see if I can clone it. So test app log level returns default. Expected will be 1, and then log level, and then I'm gonna clone this. Test log level returns value, and then on this one we'll have env app log level equals, let's say, 5, and that should be 5 here. So let me run this again. Success, and now the log level is covered as well. So now the only thing that we have is the time zone, just to make sure that we're getting the correct time zone. Let's do a copy with that. Test app time zone. Oh, I forgot an L here. That's why it was complaining earlier, or it didn't auto-complete it earlier. Test app time zone. This one will be UTC, and then time zone. Time zone could be, let's say, America. Yeah, sure, Los Angeles. And then time zone. So if I run my tests again, excellent, and my code coverage got max on that. So now we're going to concentrate on HTTP and providers, just to make sure that we have all the coverage that we need for our stuff. Let's start with providers first, okay? Because we need to make sure that the providers are doing exactly what we want them to do. I'm just going to copy a test here, and I'm going to call it response sender. No, actually that's a middleware, sorry. We're going to call it router provider test. Alright, so on the router provider test, we really don't need the backup globals. And what we're going to do is we're going to say test check registration. Let's get rid of the rest of the stuff here, because it's from a different test. Alright, so how I'm thinking of testing this is I'm going to create a container, and then I'm going to create an application. Container, and then container set shared application, yes. So now that I have the application there, I need to create that provider, and once I create that provider, I will need to check whether it has registered the stuff that I needed to register in my container. So once I execute the register command in the provider, then I can check my DI container if the changes that I wanted are exactly the same as what I expect. So we're gonna create provider equals new router provider, and then provider register, and we're gonna throw the container in it. And now in here I should have all the routes registered as expected. So what we need to do is we need to say router equals container get, actually we don't have to, we can get it from the application get router, because the router is in the application. And then routes equals router get routes. And then we have what should we do? We should call this say data equals this is gonna be a for each loop that I want to check each and every one of them if they do exist. So the first one will be a get. That's gonna be the method, or I can even use the array keys. Method will be a get, and then pattern will be this, and then of course we do have the health one, and then that one will be health. So these are the two routes that we know that we have. So for starters, let's check the counts. Expected equals count data, actual equals count routes. This asserts same. And then for each, data as we don't really need the index as route. And then what we need to do, expected equals route method, actual equals routes. We do need the index to access the array, index, and then get HTTP methods. So it's just to make sure that it's not confusing. I'm using the data here with a method, with the first method and the second method, and I know that the methods have been registered. First is this one, and then this is the second one that has been registered. I know that for a fact. If you recall, we created that anonymous function that returned nothing when we register the health route. So the health route is always at the bottom over there. So what I'm going to do is I got my routes here from the router, and that's that allows me to access this with an array syntax. And since I'm using the index here from this array, I can get to the first route. I can reference both of them. So cautious, this is route method, and it refers to this array, and this is routes index, and it refers to this array. So let's get the HTTP methods for it, and that one could be more than one. This asserts same, and also I'll do the same thing for the path, or the pattern rather. In this case, we're going to need pattern here, and then get pattern. Alright, so let's run this and let's see if we have any errors. Nope, everything is fine. So if I go back to my code coverage, you see the router provider and the routes in have been executed, and the router provider has been executed fully. It actually went there. Reminder, this is the place where I knew that the health was the last route to be registered, because the first all the routes are being attached to this part. Okay, now we have the routes in and I do believe that we will cover it in a little bit, because it does have this endpoint, but I think we'll create a test just for this, for the routes in just to make sure that that one is fine. Now we have the error handler provider that we need to to create tests for. Let's do that here, and then all right. And for the error handler provider, this time we are going to need the register globals, the backup globals. And we're going to need to test the registration. So the container should be there. Now for this one, we need the time service. If you remember in the index, PHP, we are creating the time here. We're calculating the time. So when did this application start? So what we're going to do is we need to do the same thing for here. So actually might be an idea to do a copy paste, saves us from typing. Yep. So by doing this, now the container has been created and the time has been set as a service. We need the error handler provider and then register it in the container. So now what we need to do is get rid of these. First of all, we need to make sure that the time zone has been set to whatever the env manager returns. We need to also, let's look at the code first and what we could test. First of all, we need to check the time zone. We need to also check the display errors, if it's set to on or off, and then we need to check the error reporting. Now this is a little bit of an overkill because I am checking the error reporting as EAL. This might never change, but in the case it does change for whatever reason, maybe one of your colleagues does it for some functionality that needs to be there or needs to be hidden or whatever, then you will know because the test will fail. Okay. We got that test, we got that test. This. Let's close these other guys here so that we have less things open. Okay, so first things first, the date time. We have expected equals date default time zone get actual equals env manager uptime. Oh, come on, manager at time zone assert same. I always prefer to do assert same than assert equals. There are cases, of course, that you have to use equals, especially if you're checking two different objects but they might be the same type, and there's no way for you to calculate the hash of each object just to make sure that they are the same. But it's a good habit to keep checking same, because it will check the type of the expected and the actual. Alright, so now we're going to do the display errors. Expected equals on, and then actual equals ini get display errors, and then expected equals eall actual equals ini get, it's not error log, it's error reporting, and then of course this expected actual. And what I need to do is I need to just for the future test restore error handler. Now I know for a fact that this method here sets a new error handler, and what I want to do is at the end of my test I want to restore the original error handler. Of course, if you're running your tests in isolation, which is a feature of PHPUnit, you might not even need to do that, but I'd rather have that just in case, so that we don't have any issues later on. So now what I want to do is I want to test whether this thing actually logs anything. So I'm going to clone this test, and I'm going to call it test register sets handlers and logs. Alright, again, the same stuff here. We registered our container, so we're gonna do a little bit of a different thing here. So we're gonna say okay, say message equals unique ID, let's say MSG dash, right? I don't want it to be true, I want it just to be as is, just a random string here. Trigger an error, trigger error of the message. I don't need the user notice, and then restore error handler. Let me explain what I'm doing here. I started my error handler, and there's my error handler that got registered, the one that we created for this application. I'm just creating a unique message, and then I trigger an error, and then I restore the error handler. Now that I triggered the error, what this class should do is log that error in the actual logs. So if we find that that error in the logs, that would be perfect. So what we need to calculate is where the logs are, and in order to do that real quick, we need to go to the container, go to our logger, which is here, and get these three. So we're just gonna paste them here. So the log file name will be REST API, will be in the storage logs, and that's my log file. Okay. I'm just not typing, I'm just copying, and I need to find whether the log file contains this message here. That's why I put it MSG and so on and so forth. Alright, so I need to make a slight change because I don't think it exists. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. Hold on. It is the assert. Yeah, let me create it. Okay. Let's go to this one, and what I'm going to do is we're going to create a new method here, kind of like extend the PHPUnit framework. Public function assert file contents contains string file name string stream, and then it's a void, and then what we're going to do is content file get contents of stream, and then this assert string contains string stream and contents. Actually, it's wrong. The file name should be this, and then the stream should be this. There we go. So now we have this method that we can call from the other class. So what it's going to do is going to open the file contents of my log, and then it will check if my msg dash whatever string exists. So for this this method, all we need to do is this assert file contents contains, and it will be the log file and the message. And finally, before we run anything, we need to figure out what's going on with the shutdown, and it's a similar test to this one. Shutdown again, same stuff. Let me copy these guys here and just have them handy up here before I create the container and all that stuff. But what I also want to do is I want to manipulate my environment so that it it logs certain things. So env app env, I want to make sure that it is development, and the log level, let's say that one will be 2. Now this is overkill the way I'm doing it, because the app log level for our from our error handler checks if everything is log level greater than 1. We haven't touched that, that's fine. What we could do later on as an enhancement is just make sure that, whenever you have a log level of 5 and above, then you start printing things. So if you have a log level of 1, that will be your production, that it doesn't log all sorts of register shutdown and metrics of how much memory and how long it took you to execute it. Additionally, this one here is by default development, so we're not doing anything crazy here. We're just putting these things just in case we want to change them later on. So this is more of an example, so to speak, and preparation for the future rather than now, rather than the test itself. All right, so to do this test here, what we need to do is we need to use a little bit of reflection. So we registered our provider, and what we're going to do is directly so what we're going to do is reflection equals new reflection class. And it's going to grab the provider that we have up there, which will be the error handle provider. Method equals, and it's not register shutdown, it's on. The autocomplete is getting really good at this. Method set accessibility equals true, and then we're not going to do the shutdown, we're just going to say method. Actually, we could do the shutdown as well. Method invoke provider. So now we need to register restore error handler, and then this assert true of shutdown, and then we need to do this assert file exists of the log file. Message equals shutdown, and then this assert file contents contains that, and that should be okay. Let's have a look. Alright, so line 65 of error handler provider test. Yeah, okay. We're gonna need to do this. This is int, right? Yes. Let's do an int on this. If I had assert equals here, it would have passed, but as I said, I prefer to do assert same. So too few arguments passed on shutdown. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. This one here on shutdown has the DI interface that it expects. And when we invoke it from here, we do have invoke provider, but the next one is the parameters that we need to pass. So we need to put container here. So it will call the on shutdown with this parameter. There we go. We got some good stuff here. Let's go back to our service providers, 98.75. I have the routes in them. Okay. Container, the filter. So we're doing good. We're doing really good. We're getting good coverage. We're covering areas that we need to cover, and it's spot on. Now let's do one more thing here while we're in the services part. And let's create one for the container. Container test. And the reason I create one for the container is in the case elements of the container change, I'd like to be able to pick them up. This also comes to the black hole that I was telling you that you need to have 100% code coverage. And one of the areas in the container that is not covered is the events manager, at least for now, and also the filter, at least for now, because we haven't used the filter at all. The events manager, we are going to use it a little bit later, but what we could do is we could just say test events test container event manager, and we're going to create a new container, and then what we need to do is get rid of all of this, and then we can just say actual equals container has container events manager, this assert true, and events manager equals container get shared container events manager, and then this assert instance of manager, it's this one, class events manager. And let's alright, so that one will be our events manager, and then I want to do one for the filter. And the reason I do it for the filter is because of course it's gonna run later on when we start doing validation, all that stuff, is because the filter is created by a factory, and I want to make sure that I always get a filter as it comes in. I don't have any reason to believe that it won't, but this is again the little hole that you get in order to get the 100% code coverage, and that gives you an idea how much time you can waste. So there we go. That's done. Let's go to this part here, run this, and then here container has 100. So that's all we did. Yeah, I know. Alright, so for the services also we need to do HTTP. And here, let me just copy this and put it here. For the HTTP, we need to do HTTP codes enum test. Now for this test, the reason I test enumerations is because there might be a time that we will change something in the enumeration and it won't go very well, because we might have changed the actual value of the enumeration, and all of a sudden our application doesn't work. For instance, imagine if you're keeping in an enumeration or even in constants certain statuses, so active equals 1, inactive equals 2, terminated equals 3, and so on and so forth. Well, if one of your colleagues or even yourself goes in and just accidentally says, well, these should start from 0, and you change them, immediately nothing maps to your database anymore properly. So having a test that checks all the values as it expects them from the enumeration brings you a little bit of of sanity, because you will be able to detect any change in those default values of types that you definitely don't want to change that link to the database. So what we're going to do here is we're going to test the count for starters, and we're going to have expected equals 9, actual equals cases, and then this assert count expected and actual, and this one will check if the enumerations are the way they are supposed to be. Okay, now I do have an additional test done. I'm just going to do the first element, then I'm just going to put the rest of the data in. I don't want to bore you in this. So what we need to do is we need to create a new provider method. Static function get examples array. The data providers is a feature of PHPUnit that allows you to run the same test with different parameters. So it will pick up the data provider method, which will return an array, and then we'll iterate through it, running the test with each with the data that each element of this provider offers. So return will be an array, and the first element will be HTTP codes num. Okay, and then what we want is a 200, and I'll explain what that is in just a moment. And then okay, so for the test, I'm just going to put the test right below it so that we can have a look. So public function test check items HTTP codes in equals element. Then the second one will be int code, and actually value, and then the string text. So once oh, and we have to put the annotation up here, data provider, and it will be get examples. So this annotation here, the data provider, maps to this method, which is this method. And this method, once it's PHPUnit starts iterating through it, it will iterate with this array, and then this array will be injected into this test check items, and the first element will be this, which is my HTTP codes in num. It's one of the elements. The second one will be the 200, which will be the value of the element, and the third is the OK, which will be the text of the element. If you recall, we have a text method in the HTTP codes in num that returns, so this is the value, and then in the text method we have a string that gets returned, right? So back to my test, all I have to do is expected equals value, actual equals element value, and then this assert same expected actual, that's one, expected equals text, actual equals element text, the method now. And then finally we're going to check also the error, which is the combination of these two. Expected equals, it should be the value and the text, actual equals element error, and then assert same expected and value. So we're checking the value of the enumeration, we're checking the text method and the error method whenever this thing runs. So if I run this, no problems. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the rest of the I don't want to start typing them here because it's going to take a bit of time, and it's pretty much boring. It's the same thing. So let me put a comma here and then paste them. So here's what I've done is I've taken every single one of these options that exist in the HTTP codes in num, and I said, okay, for this one you should be looking at 3402 resource not found. For this one you should be looking 3403, and so on and so forth. And this is the text that you get. Also, don't forget we're doing the check count here. So we're expecting 9 items. The minute you add a brand new enumeration for this or element in this enumeration, or you change something, this is going to start screaming. And then you can reevaluate whether this is a valid addition or alteration or anything like that. So now that we refresh, we have a little bit. The HTTP codes in num is perfect. So what we should do is we should do something with the response, I guess. Response types, we're not gonna do anything because it's an empty class, if you remember. So let's have a look if we can do something with the response test. Now have a look, we're now at 69%. We're covering a good amount of our code, and we're moving along nicely. Our services, we're nearly done with that. So let's have a look at the response. We're going to create a new test called response test. And it will help if it is a response test, not response est. There we go. Let's clear things out here. We don't need these for now. So in our response test, we have to figure out what is going on when we do all these with code, with payload data, with payload errors, and so on and so forth. The Phalcon response has been already tested, so we don't need to really check that, but we need to check whether our code is properly initialized and run whenever we need to run it. Public function test with payload meta. New container. And we need to get the response. Yeah, sure, why not? This one will be a response of this. Okay. Now, for this response, we're gonna set a couple of things. With code, let's say 404, and there will be a message of test message, and then with payload data, and let's put key equals value. Actually, let's do something else here, because sometimes we get all drawn into writing test message on anything, and I have seen cases where my test runs but my code doesn't work, and it's because I didn't diversify the code a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use unique ID. Message equals, which will guarantee that every single time I use this message, it will be a different thing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say key equals unique ID key, and then value equals unique ID value. And I'm going to replace them here. This way, every single time you run the test, it makes it a unique run, and it doesn't rely only on one only on one method. So what we're going to do is we're going to do ob start. Oops. We're going to take advantage of that, and then we're going to say response render. That's our method, and I need you to send it. All right, and then data equals ob get clean. So now we started the output buffering and we did the send, and then now we're closing the output buffering. So now we need to check exactly what we have expected. We need a 404 actual equals response get status quote, and then this assert same. Okay, so we're checking the 404. Now we need to get the reason phrase. The reason phrase is this message here that we have. Expected equals message, and then actual response get reason phrase, and then assert same. So also now we need to manipulate the data, what was returned. And if you recall, we're returning a JSON array, so or string rather. So what we need to do here is remove the timestamp and hash, because they are always changing. So data equals JSON decode data true, and then unset data meta. This one will be timestamp, and then the hash. So I remove those two. Okay. Now my expected should be, so the data should be this, equals. Now we need to have a data node, error node, and a meta node. Okay, so what do I expect to get? For starters, I expect this one to be an array that has the key and the value, since we set it here. I expect the errors to be nothing, and then I expect the meta to be a 200, and then the message will be success. A note here, the message here, the one that I have up here, the one that we do with code, this is the reason for the status code. It's not the message that we have in the meta node. There's two different things. Maybe we can rename this with code and reason or something like that, but that's the difference. And our actual equals data, and then this assert same actual and that. And let's run this, make sure that it runs, which it does. That's great. So now we have to do the same thing with the errors, just to make sure that the errors are being processed properly. Note that we will change this test as well, because the data will be an array of what? It could be a single word, or it could be a single element in there, or it could be a collection of different elements that may come from a database. For instance, you might do a user's get. So we'll find that out in a little while. Okay, so test with payload meta errors. So the container will be there. Let's do, yeah, let's leave the message there. We don't need the key and value. We don't even need the code. With payload data, we're gonna do an array of error message. Note that we have two arrays here, one out and one in, and this is because the errors will be a collection of a number as the key, which will be automatically increased, and then a different error message that will come in all the time. So we're gonna do that, and we're not gonna worry about the 404 or the reason phrase because we didn't set anything. We do have the data, and clearly data will be empty, but the errors should be message here, and the code should be 3000, and this one should be error. So if we run the code again, it has a problem here. Let's have a look. Of course, we have it with payload data. It should be with payload errors. See what happens with copy paste. So now we're done, and if we refresh, our whole response is executed, and we have really good coverage here. Let's go back. Let's have a look at the middleware. Middleware tests are going to be very easy. So let's create a new folder under, should be under services? No, we don't have it under services. It should be on its own. Let's say directory, middleware. Unit domain middleware. Okay, let's grab this test and let's paste it in here so to save us from it saves from the setup, meaning the doc blocks and all that. So for the response sender, what we need to do is we need to test the call of that. What we need to do is we're going to approach this the same way as with the providers. So we're going to create an application. We're going to dispatch. We're going to execute only that particular middleware and see what it returns. So we need to get rid of all of this. Create a new application. Micro container. And now we need to create the middleware. And we don't need the application on that. And it helps if we spell properly, middleware. So now, let's do something here. Content equals unique ID content, and then response set content equals content. And now we need to make a few things just to make sure that PHPStorm runs perfectly fine. PHPUnit. So we're gonna do a time equals server request time float or time, and then the server actually, let's do a backup globals here. So the server array should be request time float equals time, and that should be the little pointer. Request method equals, it's not going to be post, it's going to be a get. It doesn't matter for the sender. I'm just keeping them here because I'm going to need to copy them later on. Request URI equals, let's say, health, and then close this. So that's our server. Let's start the output buffering. Actual equals middleware call application, and then contents equals get clean. The middleware call application should return true because all the Phalcon middleware returns either true or false. The get clean, the output buffering, will pick up whatever contents we have. Okay, so of course we're going to do this assert true of the actual. That's how we named it. Expected equals content, actual equals contents, this expected actual. Reminder, the response sender just does a send on the response. It doesn't do anything else. Let me correct this typo. So whatever content we have, we already put it into the response from previous steps. For instance, the JSON responder did its work to add the content and call the render and the calculate meta and so on and so forth. So this one will return this variable here because that's what we send it. The response sender middleware just does the send. So we can just simplify these things. Now let's just make sure that it did work. Excellent. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to do the 404. And let's close this, open this, and then put a F5 not found middleware test. And this one will be, all right, we need to do a call, but we will also need to do a not found, before not found. So again, same story, container micro. This one will be a not found middleware. We don't really need the response. All we need to do is just call it. There you go, response time float. Let's put a unknown here, and then do a call and then assert true. So there you go. We don't even need to do the contents here. And we're going to do one more with test before not found. That's the method that is triggered when this whole thing runs. And what we did is we run the call. Now we're going to run the before not found here on this application, right? So we have the not found middleware, we have time, get, unknown, all right, before not found, and that one will accept a new event from Phalcon events, and let's just call it EV1. Doesn't matter what we call it. The second thing will be our application that goes in there, and that would run it. So now what we need to do is we need to get the contents from here, from the get clean. this one should return false, because since we hit the before not found, the route has not been found. And then contents equals JSON decode, contents true. Expected will be an array of HTTP codes enum, app resource not found, error. So the array in the array, actual equals contents errors, and then assert equals assert same actually. So now if we run it, we should be okay. All right. Again, reminder: we're hitting the before not found method, and the before not found reminder, it causes a halt with this error here, the app resource not found. Okay. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, out of the payload that we got, and this is the payload, the contents, in the errors node of that contents, do you have this? And the answer was yes. So again, on the code coverage, we're seeing a couple of them are perfectly done, and now the last one that we'll have to do is the health one. F5. And the health middleware will be very easy to do because we've pretty much done the work. Actually, let me bring this down here. Test call, and then health middleware, and then this one will be health because it will not match otherwise. This one will be call, and it needs just the application, and then all we will have to do is just say the expected, because they're pretty much the same. Actually, this one should be true. Do we return anything? Yeah, we do. Okay. So this one should be the expected, should be a status. That will be okay. And then message service operational. And if I run this, aha, we got an error. Okay. It returns nothing. Let's have a look. We got the health middleware here, micro, blah blah, and then middleware health call. Does my health work? Just for the sake of it. Yeah, it does. Service operational. Okay. Oh, of course. That's the problem if you're doing copy paste. The contents errors, the content should be data. And that should run just fine. Excellent. Again, code coverage, we covered all these guys. So our application is getting covered really nicely. Now, we have some things to do in the ADR. We have the hello. So how are we gonna do it? Let's do the hello now. And under unit domain, let's do hello here. Oops, sorry. New folder, and let's copy one class here. Hello service test. And this is going to be a kind of like an easy-ish test. We're going to utilize a lot the whole workflow, how it works. So for starters, let's do a test service, and then okay, we have our application, we have our container rather. Let's get the service container get container hello service, and that is hello service. Alright, we don't need the request time float and all that stuff. What we need to do is we need to say payload equals service invoke, and so what we need to do is expected equals domain status success. Just a reminder, the hello service creates a new payload object, returns it with domain success, and then hello world and the date. Okay, so that's what we're trying to test. Get rid of that. Too many files open. So the domain success is there. Expected actual equals payload get status, and then we're gonna need to get the result. How are we gonna do this most efficient way? Actual equals payload get result. This assert array has key. Reminder, this is the result that the payload holds, and what we're trying to find is where there has an element called results. This is what we're testing here. This is this assert array has key, and then expected equals hello world 1 2 3, and let's put a space and a dash, and then we have the date, but the date is always changing, so we cannot rely on that. Actual equals actual results, and then we're going to use this assert string contains string, and then expected equals actual. Because the date is always changing after the hello world, we're just checking this part only. And also let's do an additional test here. I'd like to do a dispatch test, and the dispatch test is performed with the output buffering. So what we're going to do, we have backup globals here, perfect. What we're going to do is we are indeed going to use some of this stuff. Let me copy it for a moment. Hello service. Alright, so let's paste that here. My URL will be the empty URL, so the base. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to even create a container or anything like that. I'm going to do ob start require once env manager app path public index.php, and then response equals ob get clean, and then the contents equals JSON decode response true. Make sure we restore the error handler, and then we have this assert array has key data, and then errors just in case. We could do the meta as well if we need to. Data equals contents data, errors equals contents errors. Let's get get rid of these guys. And now we need to do expected equals nothing, actual equals errors. This assert same that, and then expected equals hello world with a dash and a space, and just paste some stuff. That will be a data, the first element of it. So now we're doing the same thing as we did above, but we're invoking the public index.php, which will be invoked with these server variables, and then it will go and get the response. So that's the full round trip from beginning all the way to the end. And the data array that will come back, this data array, the first element should be hello world. Okay, so let's run this. Excellent. And of course now we have 100% on this, which put 100% over there, and then all we have is just a tiny bit on the services, which is under the providers, the routes, the endpoint of the routes. For that, for the routes enum, where do we have it? Routes enum is under providers. Okay, let's put it down there. Let's create one down there, router, route enum, routes enum test. We might move it later on, I don't know. And this is the same as the other enumeration that we did. It's pretty much checking whether anything has changed in my enumeration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole thing and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to adjust it a little bit so that it works with our routes. So it should be relatively the same. No, just leave that there. Okay, for starters, this is the HTTP codes enum. We don't care. The check count. Let's do the check count. The routes enum should now have two routes. Okay, one is the blanket, the blank domain, the root domain, and the second one should be the hello. So that would be two. Or should it? Or will it? No, the hold on. Routes. The routes enum should have one. It has only one route. The other one is handled by the middleware. All right, so this is routes. Actually, yeah, routes enum would be an element, and data provider, and then here it's gonna be routes enum. That one should be the first one, hello get. And then what this one should be is the value, so that's an empty value. The next thing should be the actual endpoint, so where does it lead to, so that one will be a slash. And then the next thing should be the method, which would be routes enum get. And then the last thing should be what service we're gonna have. So container hello service. So that's how we're gonna test the whole enumeration, all its methods. And we only have one element here. So of course our signature here changes because the second element is the value, but then we have string endpoint, and then string method, string service. Okay, so we have the value is the value, which is fine. This one will be endpoint, and that one will be endpoint, and we need to do this twice more. This one will be method, and finally this one will be service. So now if I run this whole thing, I have a problem. So routes in this is why we do this. It could very well be, well, I know that it is me that did this problem, but I am checking the routes in num, and of course it complains that the int is value and that enumeration is a string value. It is a backed enumeration that returns a string, so the value is a string, not an integer. The integer came from the copy that we did. So we have this thing that ran 39 tests, and if we go to the code coverage, you see that everything is at 100% here, the service is at 100, and the whole application is at 100% code coverage. This one is something to brag about. Yes, we did intentionally lose a little bit of time by trying to get this extra percent of code coverage in one of the methods, but by executing and testing our methods here, we managed to get what we need. If you recall, this whole ADR namespace was not even covered, but the minute we created the hello, it was actually covered, and that primarily is the action handler that was executed, especially when we did the dispatcher test, and the other ones are interfaces. So yeah, these are tests. We've done really good work on this, and this will help us with the new stuff that we have coming up. This must have been a little bit of a boring video because it was just me writing tests and trying to get more code coverage and correcting PHPStan, but I hope that you can get a little bit of value with regards to how we test, what the methodology is, and so on and so forth. There's also test-driven development. Many books have been written about this, and the pure test-driven development is when you write the test before you write the code. So in our case here, if I wanted to write, let's say this one here, the routes in num test, I would have had to write to think about what my enumeration should have, and write a test. What I expect, clearly the enumeration would be empty at the time and the test would fail, but then based on the test I would go and correct the enumeration, the code to do that. By doing the tests first, there's a lot of trains of thought here, but by doing the tests first, you're actually thinking of all the operations that your code does. From experience, it does help. Once you start doing it, it becomes extremely fast. Well, not as fast as writing code without tests, I can tell you that, but it becomes really fast, and it does help you with your thought process. If you have proper requirements in your application and you know exactly what you need to do, you can write the test right after you write the code, so it wouldn't matter that much. Neither here nor there. Everybody works the way they need to work, or they can work based on whatever constraints they have from work or from their projects. So yeah, the next time what we're gonna do is we're gonna start going heavily on the users. So we're gonna create a framework to get a user from the database. That will require a database connections. While we're there, might as well do the Redis one as well. These are registrations in the DI container. We need to find a way to safely move the request data to our services, in particular the domain. And then we have to figure out a way to shield our application from the database by splitting and not having the database being as a persistent layer. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a repository to get the data that we need. So yeah, this and more in an upcoming episode of Phalcon REST API with version 6. Thank you so much, and see you on the next one.